Today, we're looking at Colorverse Sea of Tranquility. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Colorverse Sea of Tranquility is a green ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's Ahab with a modified flex nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we go to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And immediately in the water, we see a dark green line that is really not moving. But as it pushes up, you see that we get a blue that comes in, a separation because of the very light green that then comes in at the top. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. That dark green line, that ink did not move its way up. We still see some of that kind of blue that's there. We still see some separation and the very light green, but it has not traveled nearly as far as it has in the past. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, this is another Colorverse ink that handles itself amazingly. There's nothing that it doesn't look like anything's happened for it being highlighted. There's no spreading from an extra fine to a fine. There's absolutely no movement of this ink whatsoever, making it very good in a note-taking situation. Now, water is removing all of the green, but leaving that darkest green that was in the chromatography still there, that darkest green grayish tone. It's still very there. The water is not removing it. Pen Flush is having the same problem. It's removing all of the green but leaving that darkest green gray from the chromatography still there. It's not removing it. Now, a 1/3 bleach solution completely removed it from the paper. And if you do need to use this 1/3 bleach solution, just immediately flush your pen. Don't rust your metal parts over an ink. For the inks I've tested, I found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Colorverse Sea of Tranquility has a viscosity of 3.33, making it a pretty dry ink. Pretty dry. I mean, it's moving its way away from normal quite a bit. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Colorverse Sea of Tranquility has an average dry time of 16 seconds, despite being so very dry. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and it's a good one. It's just a good one. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It has some shading, and when some of the shading comes through, it's very nice. Like the T in Tranquility has some light to dark, light to dark, light to dark in it, and then Tranquility gets very dark until I move up in the L and it gets lighter again. Although the 1.1 is a very dark tone of it. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and some gorgeous shading. Just gorgeous. The goes very light to very dark. Quick starts very light and works its way dark. Brown starts as a mid-tone, goes light and gets very dark. Fox starts very light and gets very dark. It is beautiful shading throughout all of this writing. And 12 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and the shading comes through even nicer because of the thicker lines. Like Quick is very, very light at the top of the Q. It gets very dark on the bottom into a mid-tone as I come back up
into the U. And then it works its way darker all the way into the K. Brown starts very dark and works its way light. Fox starts very light and works its way dark. Beautiful. And 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium shows plenty of color variation. We expected it. We got it. It is fantastic. In the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Without a doubt. Tomaway River. No bleeding. We get ghosting. Getting a drink while I'm turning the page, can't do it. It doesn't go too well. Not two things at the same time. The 1.1 is no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. It just is a very nice green. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 19 seconds to dry. Now the medium is a darker tone than the extra fine, but not as dark as the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 25 seconds to dry. I would not use this ink on this paper because it does not feel worth it. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. Now the smear test, you couldn't recover it. Sorry. Built you up for nothing. Rhodia. Rhodia has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading. It's just that it's very dark here. No shade, sorry. But the extra fine, where it lightens up in tone a little bit, gets no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and some very, very nice shading. Now, it's one of the things I love about green inks. They shade so well. And this is a true green. I know this was already on camera. This is a true green. I mean, we get the gray, but it's not that yellow and blue. And yes, we see some of the blue there-ish, but it's green. The extra fine shading, we see it's very dark on the left side of the quick. It gets very light. It gets to mid-tone and super dark. Brown starts as a mid-tone, gets super dark. Fox is a very dark bottom of the F, a much lighter top of the F. Into the O, it's a very light and then super dark into the X. Beautiful. And 13 seconds to dry. Now the medium is a darker tone than the extra fine, but not as dark as the 1.1. Medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We have some spots of shading. Spots of shading, spots of it being a little lighter. Like the T to H and the, a little lighter. The up swoop of the Q and the top circle of the Q are a little darker than a down swoop. Nice. Fox starts light and gets dark. Fantastic. It's just not as pronounced as it is with the extra fine. Not on this paper. 14 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows plenty of color variation, and we got plenty. The scrubby of the medium, you have to look far left to far right to see it, and that's about the variation we got there. This smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. So, life paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, spots of shading coming through, make a hole. It's very nice. Spots, like the RV in Colorverse, is lighter than the rest of the word, and it draws my eye right to the center of that word. Tranquility starts light, gets dark, starts getting lighter again, starts getting darker, and then gets super dark. Very nice. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and some great shading. Like the starts light and gets super dark. Quick starts very dark, gets very light, gets very dark again. Beautiful. Brown starts very dark and gets very light, and on the N, very dark again. Amazing. 11 seconds to dry. The medium is a much darker tone than the extra fine, but it is a hair lighter than the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and it offers some shading, like in Quick. Very dark, mid-tone on the Q to U, very dark again. Fox, the top of the F is a nice mid-tone, the bottom is very dark, into the O is a mid-tone, at the X, super dark. So we're getting mid-tones and very darks, but not any of the lights. 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows plenty of color variation, and we got a ton of color variation. In the scrubby of the medium, you have to look far left to far right, and you can see it. And that's about what we got here. And a smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. So we look at Lavender paper, which has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading comes through here. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and it offers some very nice shading. Much more casual shading than we've seen on some of the other ones, but it's some very nice shading, like Over starts nice and light and works its way darker. Quick starts dark, works into light, works back into dark. Brown starts dark and works light. Very nice shading here with the extra fine, 8 seconds to dry. Now medium becomes a significantly darker tone than the extra fine. It's the same dark tone as the 1.1. Medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows plenty of color variation, and we got it in the writing sample. The medium shows us none, and we got none, and the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Franklin Christoph. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It's a very dark tone. The extra fine lightens up quite a bit, significantly lighter. No feather, spread, halo, sheen. Some shading spots, like the H in the is darker than the rest of the word. The K in quick, the B in brown, the X in fox. What we get is dark letters, and it looks really nice. This is a fantastic ink. 6 seconds to dry. So really nice shading in that we get dark letters in words, and only 6 seconds to dry. Now medium, significantly darker than the extra fine. It's the same dark tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading, 7 seconds to dry. Same dry time, significantly darker. It looks like an entirely different ink. The scrubby of the extra fine shows plenty of color variation, and we got plenty, and the scrubby of the medium shows none, and we got none. In the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Colorverse Sea of Tranquility, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And I had kind of a monochromatic feel about this, and I'm not thinking this wound up being the best choice. So go ahead and tell me what you think would be a great complement color. I went with the Atramentis Mint Turquoise because I felt like the green really tied them together and they were different enough to stand on their own together on the page. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Colorverse Sea of Tranquility? This is a great tone of green, and the shading that it is giving is absolutely what it should be. Greens tend to be able to shade very well. This one is taking really good advantage of that. Now, despite it being an expensive ink, I believe that this could be worth purchasing a bottle when you enjoy greens as much as I do. Thanks for watching.